Hi guys, today we'll be classifying hormones based on what solubility. Alright, we'll be classifying hormones based on solubility, and let's go in and see what the lecture notes has for us. So by the way, classification of hormones based on solubility is into what? Classification of hormones based on solubility is into water soluble hormones and fat soluble hormones. Water soluble hormones are the hydrophilic and the fat soluble hormones are the hydrophobic. Okay, so classification of hormones based on solubility. Let's go. The first one we have here is water soluble hormones, and in these water soluble hormones, we'll get to talk about their mechanism of action. Okay, now we say that many hormones are what water soluble, that's hydrophilic. They have no transport proteins, and therefore have what short plasma half-life. They initiate a response by binding to a receptor. Okay, so they have a second messenger, and they are usually located on the plasma membrane. The mechanism of action of this group of hormones can be discussed in terms of what intracellular signals they generate. Okay, so water soluble hormones bind to cell surface and they trigger the action. From the cell surface, they trigger whatever action or effect they have on the cell without entering the cell. Okay, so they have second messengers. So we see that water soluble hormones bind to cell surfaces, and the conformational change resulting from the binding activates what an effector system, which is in turn responsible for the downstream action of the hormone. Okay, the hormone need not enter the cell. The effect is felt from the cell surface. Now, say that for most water soluble hormones, the intracellular effect that is activated by the hormone receptor interaction is a specific what G protein, that's a guanyl nucleotide binding protein, and the receptors are called what G protein coupled receptors. Once the G protein coupled receptors are occupied by a hormone, the G protein subunit begins what a cascade of activation of specific enzymes that generate molecules that serve as what second messengers to effect the hormone response. The best known of these are what adenyl cyclase, which generates cyclic adenosine monophosphate. Okay. Secondly, we have what phospholipase C, which generates what inositol 1,4,5 triphosphate. Okay, and diacyl glycerol. Okay, these are the second messengers that will I say they collect whatever effect this hormone has on the cell and take it on behalf of the hormone without the hormone going into the cell. Okay, so sorry, this is just a mechanism of action of water soluble hormones. You could pause this. This is a summary of everything we are talking about. Pause this and look at the picture. Now, the production of second messenger and subsequent magnitude of effect of the hormone is a function of the amount of hormone that bounds to the what G protein coupled receptor. An important feature of the second messenger model is that the hormone need not enter the cell and its impact is made at the cell membrane. Okay, the biological effects of the hormones are mediated inside the cell by the second messenger. Okay, rather than the hormone itself. Cyclic adenosine monophosphate elicits many of its effects by activating what protein kinases. Okay, so when the second messengers are activated, they go into the cell to activate what protein kinases. Now we say that these are families of enzymes that in the presence of what cyclic adenosine monophosphate phosphorylate a number of intracellular enzymes and other proteins to activate or inactivate the function of these enzymes and proteins, thereby what regulating their function. As a further means of regulating hormone action, this CAMP dependent kinases consists of what subunits, two subunits. The first subunit is what catalytic subunit. The second one is what regulatory subunit. and this subunit can bind to the CAMP, okay? Whichever one is bound, catalytic, you should know that it will enhance or promote any reaction, while regulatory will serve to what? Suppress. Now we say that in the absence of CAMP, the catalytic and the regulatory subunits form a complex which is enzymatically inactive. In the presence of CAMP, however, the complex disintegrates, freeing the catalytic subunit, which now becomes what? Catalytically active as the phosphorylating enzyme. Alright, so these protein kinases are actually subunits of two things, and they become active only when this in the presence of this CAMP, okay? And in the presence of this CAMP, they differentiate to release the catalytic subunit, okay? Then we are done with the mechanism of action of water-soluble hormones. So we'll be talking about the fat-soluble hormones now. They are mainly steroid hormones, and they are synthesized using what? Cholesterol as a substrate by simple alteration of the structure. They are hydrophobic and insoluble in water. In plasma, these hormones circulate reversibly, bound to transport proteins. Examples of these hormones are the cortisol binding globulin and the sex hormone binding globulins, with only a small fraction free or unbound available to exert physiological action. Okay, so this is a mechanism of action of fat soluble or lipid soluble, and this is a summary of everything that we are going to talk about in this handout. In the last step, you can see that they participate in gene protein synthesis. Okay, they participate in all this gene stuff, right? So we say that free steroids, being hydrophobic, enters the cell by what? Passive diffusion, and they bind to the intracellular receptors either in the cytoplasm or the nucleus, and their binding results in what? Conformational change that enables the hormone receptor complex to bind to a specific regulatory DNA sequences in the 5' end of the target gene. Okay. Now, the binding of the hormone receptor complex to the DNA regulatory elements that either increases or represses the gene transcription, the messenger RNA, which is either increased or decreased by the hormone receptor binding to the target gene, regulates the synthesis of specific proteins that mediate what? Hormones physiological actions. Okay, so they regulate hormone physiological action. Okay, either increasing the effect or decreasing the effect. Okay, so that, guys, we are done with the um um hormonal classification based on solubility, and I'll see you guys in the next tutorial. Bye for now.